Did you know that you have a high-rolling, risk-taking, pleasure-seeking, Hawaiian shirt-wearing casino daddy living inside of you? Is that scary? But it's true. Tucked within your soul and your birth chart, there is a big, hairy-chested man dripping with gold chains, drinking Mai Tais, and throwing down hundos on a craps table somewhere. And today, we're going to figure out who that is. We are going to figure out what Jupiter in your chart is doing for you. Yes, honey, we are talking about your Jupiter, your personal casino daddy, and how you can access all of this Vegas-inspired magic. So hit the ATM, baby, because the chai tea is fabulous tonight. Hello, and welcome to AstroloTea with Aliza Kelly. I am your host and your spiritual friend, Aliza Kelly, and I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome to our Wednesday tea party. If you are new here, hello. Oh my God, you found us. You found us at the perfect moment because today we are talking about Jupiter in your chart. Yes, we are. But each week, I am serving two hot, fresh, brand new episodes. On Mondays, I will always have your horoscope and your forecast for the week ahead. Those are the weekly brews. And then every single Wednesday, we have a tea party where we steep deep into how astrology shows up in your life and in your chart. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to say, hey, you. Thank you so much for tuning in and for supporting AstroloTea with Aliza Kelly. If you haven't yet, please take a minute to rate, review, and follow AstroloTea. Not only does this help others discover the show, but I love reading all of your comments and building our community on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. But seriously, give us some love. Be my casino daddy tonight. Follow, subscribe right now because I can guarantee, honey, that I will always serve you the latest and greatest AstroloTea on this side of the galaxy. Okay? Are you ready to talk about Jupiter? Of course you are. Roll the dice. The tea party begins right now. Hello, friends. Welcome to the tea party. I am your host, your friend, Aliza Kelly, and today we are talking about the great benefic. Yes, the planet of luck and abundance and expansion and fortune and rolling the big dice on life, spinning that wheel, okay? The planet that I lovingly and respectfully and maybe even yearnfully, if that's a word, refer to as Casino Daddy. And boy, oh boy, do I love this daddy. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system, and he fucking knows it. In fact, the image that I would like for you to conjure is a large, rotund man dripping in gold chains, bedazzled bracelets and rings on every digit. He has a loud and very in-your-face Hawaiian shirt. Maybe it's Versace. It's probably Versace. It's open, obviously, so tufts of chest hair are billowing out. And when Jupiter walks into the room, everyone knows it because this infectious, roaring laughter bounces across the walls. He has beautiful ladies on either arm. In his presence, you don't even have to know him because he's buying you a shot. In fact, drinks are on the house. Another round on Jupiter, of course. Wait, what time is it? Is the sun coming up? Who knows? There are no clocks or windows in a casino, baby. Everyone knows that. We are here to have fun. So throw another 100 down. Let's get a bet going. Who is partying with Jupiter tonight? Listen, I don't want to be a buzzkill, but has anyone talked to Jupiter about his drinking, his spending? Has anyone talked to him about his womanizing? He's been at the casino for like 2,000 years. He's starting to smell a little. I mean, is he okay? Does he even have a hotel room here? Does he even shower? Because honey, it is true that Jupiter is fun and fabulous and excessive, but that excess can sometimes be excessive, just too much. And that is the Jupiter way. Jupiter expands whatever it touches, which can also speak to overindulgence and even inflammation. Honey, yes, did you know that Jupiter rules inflammation, our body's response to too much? Now, one of the reasons Jupiter is such a big deal in astrology is because it is a relatively slow-moving celestial baddie. Jupiter is the first of the outer planets. It's the first planet after the asteroid belt, and Jupiter takes about 12 years to orbit the sun. It spends about 1 year in every single zodiac sign before it moves on to the next. And because Jupiter governs growth and opportunity and philosophy and culture and collective belief systems and spends 1 whole year in a zodiac sign, the sign that Jupiter moves through tells us something about the broader zeitgeist of that year, of that moment in time. It tells us what we are collectively learning about and exploring and expanding. It tells us where we are seeking meaning and what the type of growth that we are all living in collectively. You can actually see Jupiter's fingerprints all over recent history and pop culture. Because remember, with Jupiter spending 1 year in every sign, it's going to really speak to what that moment in time looks like. So it's very interesting to think about those years where Jupiter and the sign that it's in has been especially pronounced. Some of the ones that come to mind are when Jupiter was in Scorpio. That coincided with the Me Too movement, bringing hidden truths and power dynamics and sex and secrecy and accountability into the collective spotlight. We were talking about things that we had not talked about before, which is all about Jupiter expanding in the territory of Scorpio, which is secrets. Jupiter in Capricorn aligned perfectly with the beginning of the pandemic, COVID, lockdown, when we were all constricted and restricted to our homes. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which is restriction. And if we fast forward to Jupiter in Gemini, that was during an election cycle when we had AI introduced during the first presidential election ever in history, which is very tank considering the fact that Gemini is all about headlines and information, and Jupiter in Gemini is all about making sense of the misinformation as we are being inundated with that slop. And over the past year, we've had Jupiter in Cancer, and that has brought into the culture some really fascinating conversations around health, new medications like the GLP-1s, transforming our understanding of health and the body and medicine. And we've also had very meaningful conversations around femininity and girlhood, womanhood. We have seen the rise of the female pop star archetype and these performers having more autonomy over their image and careers. And we have also then seen the sad pendulum swing back to an obsession with thinness and also a rise in trad wives, a real surge in conservative family values. But that's the Jupiter way, right? It expands everything it touches, which means it's excess on all sides of the equation. So soon we have Jupiter moving into Leo. And if Jupiter in Cancer has been so much about what it means to be in our bodies, what it means to be in our families, Jupiter in Leo is going to be about the performance, baby, the glamour, the celebrity, the spectacle. I think that with Jupiter coming into Leo, we are going to experience this larger than life period defined by like big personalities, maybe this renewed fascination with like movie stars and pageantry and public figures who just like, you know, have these like almost like big drag personas. We could see this continued rise of sports culture, the rise of the athlete, right? Jupiter was in Leo during the era of Michael Jordan in the 90s. I think that we are going to see bigger conversations overall around creativity and artistry and authorship, what it means to stand behind your work, to have a voice, right? Maybe we're going to see some really interesting conversations around IPs and copyright, especially in this new age of AI that we're living in. And I also think about how we can use the last time Jupiter was in Leo as information, right? That was from 2014 to 2015. And what really stands out to me as a podcaster myself now is the fact that that was when Serial launched. And that was the podcast that really changed the entire landscape and develop this new industry, right? It like put it on the map. So maybe we're going to see another new creative industry emerge in the next year. We have a lot that we are going to discover together as Jupiter moves into Leo. But did you know that every single one of us has Jupiter somewhere in our birth chart? Yes, yes, yes. Jupiter was occupying a zodiac sign at the moment you took your first breath. And wherever Jupiter is in your chart reveals something so incredibly important about how you grow, right? What confidence looks like for you, how you experience luck and abundance, where you are willing to take some risks, right? As well as whatever tendencies you may have towards excess or overindulgence or too much, right? But as we work with Jupiter and as we figure out what sign it's in, we can find that perfect level of risk and reward, which enables us to access the most expansive version of ourselves. And what also I think is so important to note about Jupiter is that Jupiter isn't just casino daddy. Jupiter is also professor daddy. It is. Jupiter is really a philosopher. It's an archaeologist. It's an academic, right? It's Indiana Jones, because fundamentally Jupiter wants us to experience more. And that also means more perspective. And when we think about like this relationship to more, having more perspective, more wisdom, more spirituality, more faith, more hope, more optimism is a huge part of abundance, right? In fact, before Neptune was discovered and given the association with spirituality and mysticism, that was also Jupiter's role. It was faith, magic, our connection to God, our connection to a higher power, right? Jupiter is the essence of someone who has spent 30 years wandering the world and then comes back with all of the answers and the meaning of life, right? Like casino daddy, guru daddy, it's one and of the same. Because even with all of the excess, Jupiter's fundamental question isn't just about getting more, it's about understanding the pursuit of moreness. Why are we here? What are we doing? And when you start actually pursuing those questions, the purpose, the takeaway, the meaning, that's when we really step into Jupiter's domain. Jupiter is the meaning-making machine. It's the abundance of cash and mai tais, but it's also the abundance of wisdom and faith and belief systems and languages and learning and literally understanding the everythingness, the totality of life. That's T. Now, before we get into Jupiter through every single zodiac sign and what it means in your chart, we need to talk about where this archetype comes from, okay? We need to talk about the lore. We need to talk about the mythology. We need to understand the story. Now, you may be more familiar with Jupiter as Zeus, which was Jupiter's Greek mythology counterpart, okay? King of the gods, wild, thunderbolt throwing, lady loving, iconic, problematic king. But did you know that Jupiter was born into a very difficult situation? Sure, Jupiter was a Nepo baby, but very few would envy this upbringing, okay? Because his daddy was, you guessed it was Saturn. Now, Saturn was the son of Uranus, and when Saturn's mommy was pregnant with Saturn, Uranus was so afraid of being overthrown by Saturn and Saturn's siblings, the other Titans, that Uranus, Jupiter's grandfather, so stay with me here, literally tried to prevent Saturn's mom from delivering Saturn and Saturn's siblings, okay? So Saturn and Saturn's Titan siblings were actually suspended in their mother's contractions. And Saturn is the symbol of constriction, right? Tank. There are no coincidences. But despite the fact that Saturn had a horrible monster father who ended up being banished, I might add, we know how generational trauma works. And tragically, Saturn ended up repeating these same horrible patterns. And at some point in Saturn's life, he received a prophecy that one of his children would overthrow him. So being this very unhealed freak who clearly was not working through his daddy issues with a therapist, Saturn decided that every single time a child was born, one of his children was born, he would swallow them whole. And I always think about the fact that Uranus, Saturn's father, forced his mother into perpetual pregnancy. But Saturn ended up with this strange pregnant belly of his own by way of consuming his children. I mean, it's so interesting. And I have to say that I understand Freud's obsession with mythology because there is a lot to unpack. There's a lot to discuss. There's a lot of issues here that we need to explore. Anyway, Saturn becomes consumed by control and is consuming his children by way of the control. And his wife, Rhea, eventually is just like, what the fuck is going on? This is horrifying. So obviously, like, she's like, this is not going to work. I can't keep doing this. And she has a child, Jupiter. And when Jupiter is born, she's like, I'm not doing this again. I know what Saturn does. He's such a bad father. So she hides Jupiter away and tricks Saturn into swallowing a stone wrapped in a blanket. And Saturn, crazy head, is like, nom, 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 my child. Meanwhile, Jupiter, lucky Jupiter, is spared and ends up being raised on like a private island. In fact, I think it's Crete. Beautiful. And while he is growing up, he's like nursing on the milk of nymphs, and he's getting like hotter and tanner and buffer and stronger and also wiser and more erudite and literally becoming someone who can do and accomplish anything because they had the luck and the fortune to put them in this very protected environment. And eventually, Jupiter is big enough and strong enough and bad enough to show up. He's hot, he's buff, he confronts Saturn, and depending on which story you prefer, he either makes Saturn regurgitate his children or he cuts open his stomach. You pick your favorite freaky version. And, obviously that fulfills the prophecy, but it also makes Jupiter king of the gods. He assigns different kingdoms to his siblings. Well, his male siblings. Pluto got the underworld, Neptune got the sea, but there were also goddesses in there, Vesta, Ceres, Juno, and then Jupiter reigns supreme. And it's Casino Daddy, hello Las Vegas residency. But then we also know a thing or two about Jupiter. He's very temperamental. He's a philanderer. He ends up actually marrying his sister. Come on, Freud, right? Let's talk about it. There is this true deep arrogance to Jupiter because, he did something extraordinary, but there's also this unchecked power because Jupiter was able to get away with everything, right? So naturally, this leads to this tendency to overindulge, which is something we always need to keep in mind with the Jupiter archetype. So, of course, Jupiter is associated with the opportunity of growth. Jupiter is associated with expansion. Jupiter represents the possibility of living, right? Even against impossible odds and circumstances. So Jupiter is freedom. Jupiter is the future. Jupiter is the celebration of the future. Jupiter takes the risk and ends up with the greatest reward of all, which is being the king of the kings, right? And that's exactly what Jupiter is doing in your chart, diva. Jupiter is how you grow. Jupiter is the opportunity, the unexpected opportunity that will change your life forever. Jupiter is how you develop faith in yourself, how you become this hot, buff, king, ruler, queen, diva, right? Jupiter and the sign that it occupies when you were born reveals the style of your expansion. It reveals how you broaden your horizons, where your opportunities are going to emerge, and what helps you become the fullest and most actualized version of yourself. And when we come back, we are going to talk about what Jupiter is doing in your chart. We are going to talk about Jupiter through every single zodiac sign, what it means for you, why it matters, and how it is going to help you really understand luck and abundance and fortune and spirituality and all casino daddy things. Stay tuned because we will be right back after this quick break. So hold on to that chai tea. Welcome back, divas. We've talked about what Jupiter is. We've talked about why Jupiter matters. We've talked about growth and faith and possibility and our beloved casino daddy, who is also Professor Daddy. But now we are going to talk about what Jupiter is doing for you, okay? And how Jupiter in your chart reveals how you grow, how you build up your confidence, and how you develop a relationship with possibilities. And one thing I want you to keep in mind as we move through these Jupiter placements is that Jupiter always wants more. It wants more experience, more perspective, more life. Jupiter has a lust for life. So the sign that Jupiter is in your chart is going to show you, yes, where you have the opportunity to expand, but also maybe where things can go a little too far, right? So we're going to talk about both sides of the Jupiter coin, right? The opportunity and the moreness, and then the moreness, right? The, woo, maybe you want to roll this back a little bit. So let's do it, okay? Starting naturally with Jupiter in Aries. If you have Jupiter in Aries, you absolutely have that king thing going on, gender neutral king thing, okay? But I do want to share with you that I remember a long time ago when I was with one of my mentors, Ann Ortley, and I had just met this Aries named Luke. And I got his chart and I showed her his chart. And Luke is an Aries sun, Aries North Node, Aries Jupiter, and they're all conjunct, like basically all on top of each other at the same point. And Anne was like, oh, so he's an emperor. But don't worry, because he's a good king. So you're okay. And I've thought about that forever, right? Like, what does it mean to be an emperor? What does it mean to be a good king? What does it mean to have absolute power, but to rule in a way that is going to be kind? And it's interesting because Jupiter in Aries sort of tells the story of someone who's a warrior, right, being elevated into that position of power, maybe by way of fighting their way to the top, right? So like, what has that fight entailed? It's going to look different for everyone. But anyone who has Jupiter in Aries is going to be somebody who is activated by action itself, someone who learns by doing, someone who discovers what's possible by trying things out, and someone who ultimately builds confidence through experience, not through theorizing about things, but like through being on the battlefield. While some other people are like, okay, I'm going to make this a pro and con list, Jupiter in Aries is like, I booked the ticket, I launched the project, I married my crush, and if you don't like it, off with your head. There is a deep confidence with Jupiter in Aries that isn't always justified, but it has that sort of like my way or the highway coded energy. And there's something very powerful and strong about that. The great gift of Jupiter in Aries is the courage. This placement understands that opportunity reveals itself after we take the first step, not before. And at the same time, since Jupiter expands everything it touches, confidence can occasionally become unchecked ego, right? And someone who's very impulsive might mistake a whim for an instinct or intuition. So for anyone with Jupiter in Aries, the lifelong lesson is learning the difference between taking the meaningful risk and then the reckless one. With Jupiter in Aries operating at its highest expression, it's really a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing that anyone can do is just get started. If your Jupiter is in Taurus, you understand intrinsically that things grow through consistency and commitment and patience. This is a placement that really gets compound interest, okay? And whether we are talking about money or relationships or creative projects or even self-worth, opportunities for you emerge because you have invested in them. That's a real 401k, mama. You know how to water the garden. You know how to tend to the soil. You know that roses take a few years to get to blooming. Jupiter in Taurus understands that real abundance is built one decision at a time. The challenge, of course, is becoming so attached to a version of stability that growth actually becomes a little threatening, or that you stop seeing life as this moving and changing and ever expanding thing because you're like, no, I didn't invest in that, so that can't be. It's not going to pay off because that isn't where I put my money. And it's like, honey, I'm so sorry, that ship sailed a long time ago. I'm sorry those Beanie Babies are just not going to offer the payout that you were hoping they would. But but that really should not be your only retirement plan. You know what I mean? So the lesson for Jupiter in Taurus is to build abundance without becoming rigid and set in its ways, to keep improving the system, to keep updating the strategy, to keep treating value as something that is cultivated through time. Your garden is going to change because that's what a garden does. But yes, you need to tend to it consistently, patiently, diligently, year after year. And it's not that we want to prevent the change of the garden, it's that we want to continue to put our attention and focus to where we know it's going to pay off and matter fundamentally, like broadly, big picture, right? And one day, all of that consistency, all of that dedication is going to ensure that you can reap the rewards that you have been counting on. And that's the hibiscus tea. If your Jupiter is in Gemini, you grow through curiosity. This is a placement that expands through learning and conversation and storytelling and connection. Your life gets bigger and bolder and badder every single time you're exposed to a new idea. Every single time you adopt a new perspective or a new way of understanding the world. Jupiter in Gemini finds opportunities through communication. These opportunities could be maybe writing or speaking or networking, storytelling, or encouraging others to tell their stories too. And what's really fascinating about this placement is that Gemini is constantly collecting information. And Jupiter is actually technically in its detriment in Gemini because Gemini is so focused on the details. And Jupiter is, the big swings of spirituality and philosophy. And it wants to wax poetic on the totality of the meaning of life. Gemini is a dialogue, but Jupiter is a dissertation. You know what I mean? So Jupiter in Gemini can sometimes get so enchanted, so fixated on the exciting, shiny things that it struggles to actually find the bigger picture, right? Like the big meaning in all of it. Because for a Jupiter in Gemini, you're like, that path is interesting. So is that one. So is that one. That's an interesting idea. But where are you going? Right? Like, how are you going to get there? You need to be able to figure out what the mission is. So the lifelong lesson for a Jupiter in Gemini person is to understand how all of that insight is going to ultimately transform and unveil into a greater wisdom of the world, right? Knowledge is powerful, but knowledge becomes truly transformative when it doesn't just open the door, but it actually allows you to walk through the door and onto a path that is filled with the abundance of magic and possibility. Like, don't get too excited about a door opening. Get excited about you walking through it. If your Jupiter is in Cancer, it's really a sleigh, okay? This is one of the most celebrated placements in astrology because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, meaning these archetypes naturally support each other. Jupiter wants expansion and Cancer wants nourishment. And together they create this ecosystem that understands the truth that growth really comes from creation. And creation is something that we tend to through care and love and our support. Jupiter in Cancer finds opportunities through family, chosen family, community, how we show up for people, how we show up for ourselves. This placement grows when it feels emotionally connected to what it's building. And because Jupiter has spent the past year moving through Cancer, if you have Jupiter in Cancer in your chart, this story has been especially important for you. If you have Jupiter in Cancer, honey, you have been going through your Jupiter return, which only happens every 12 years. So this happens when you're around 12 years old, 24 years old, 36 years old, 48 years old, 60 years old. Do the math, baby. Keep it going. This is a new era of expansion and finding new ways that you can start a new 12-year-long cycle of abundance. So let me ask you, what has changed in your life since last summer? What new story is unfolding? What foundations have you been building? Because Jupiter returns are major and they introduce us to the next phase of our evolution. So even if this year has not been easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl for you, it has been powerful, has it not? Because something new is blooming. And whatever started this year is going to change your life in a very abundant and positive way for a very long time, or at least for the next 12 years. If your Jupiter is in Leo, growth happens through creativity and self-expression and the willingness to be seen. This placement intrinsically understands that life is meant to be fabulous, period. Opportunities are going to emerge when you are willing and brave enough to share your gifts and trust your voice and allow yourself to find the most flattering light. Leo is ruled by the sun, hello. But don't forget that Jupiter in Leo is also generous. It wants to inspire. It wants to inspire creation and celebration. It wants to be inspiring. It wants to create a bonfire, right? This is a placement that understands that joy is infectious. At the same time, every Leo placement eventually has to confront the difference between authentic self-expression and seeking validation. And Jupiter, the biggest planet in our solar system in Leo, doesn't just want applause, honey. It wants a standing ovation. It wants one of those Cannes 35-minute long standing ovations. So with this placement, it's important to remember that you are going to find the most abundance and the most power when you create because you love to create, not when you're creating because you're trying to prove something. And if this is your placement, baby, get ready because Jupiter is entering Leo for the first time in 12 years, which means your Jupiter return is about to begin. Jupiter takes 12 years to orbit the sun, which means around the ages of 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, keep it going, Jupiter comes back to the same place it was when you were born. And every single Jupiter return marks the beginning of a brand new era of expansion, a new adventure, a new chapter, a new 12-year-long story, honey. So I want you to think back, okay? Think back to what was going on in your life 12 years ago, from 2014 to 2015. And how did whatever you start then establish a new 12-year story in your life? And baby, are you ready for a new cycle to begin? Because you better be. With Jupiter coming into Leo, this story is going to be about creativity and visibility and courage and joy. So now you need to ask yourself, do you feel like you deserve to be seen? Yes. What do you feel deserves celebration? The answer is you. What gifts are you ready to share? Let us know, because whatever is going to begin over the next year is going to change your life in a major way. It's going to establish a new paradigm that's going to last at least for 12 years. So get ready, baby, lock in, because this is a major moment for you. If your Jupiter is in Virgo, growth happens through mastery itself. Jupiter in Virgo understands that excellence is a spiritual practice, period. Jupiter in Virgo expands through skill building and refinement and service, improving systems, the willingness to improve itself through time. Opportunities emerge for someone with Jupiter in Virgo because people can trust this placement. They trust your work. They trust your attention to detail. They trust your ability to actually build and commit to something, right? Build something meaningful and make it your entire passion and purpose to turn it into something magic, right? And I cannot help but think of Kim Kardashian and her Jupiter in Virgo, because truly love her or hate her, she did chip away at her career until she chiseled it into a real Michelangelo, right? Like a real culture-shaping statue, which is such tea, and also so Jupiter in Virgo, that dedication, that commitment, that focus, okay? Now, the challenge with Jupiter in Virgo is perfectionism. Jupiter in Virgo can become so hyper-focused on what it wants to improve that it forgets to acknowledge how far it's come. But with this placement, when you can actually start to integrate that perfectionism, and you can recognize that the point isn't trying to be perfect, it's trying to be dedicated and committed, it really begins to unlock the power. The power of Jupiter in Virgo reminds us that growth is about the long game, honey. Sometimes growth looks like showing up consistently and honoring the craft, and sometimes it looks like doing it out of spite to prove people wrong all along the way. That's tea. Listen, I don't make the rules. I just spill. Jupiter is getting bigger and badder as we keep going, and we are on a roll. When we come back, we are going to talk about Jupiter in Libra through Jupiter in Pisces, the second half of the zodiac. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back, high rollers. We have made it to the second half of the zodiac, which means we are entering some very interesting territory because the first 6 signs teach us how to establish ourselves in the world. But these second 6 signs teach us what happens when we begin engaging with something much bigger than just ourselves. Whew, tea. So let's keep it going, starting back up with Jupiter in Libra. If your Jupiter is in Libra, growth happens through relationships. Now, easy does it, champion. I don't just mean romantic relationships. I mean all relationships, friendships, collaborations, partnerships, mentorships, the people who challenge you, the people who inspire you, the people who completely change your life simply because they entered it for 30 minutes. That's tea. Jupiter in Libra understands something that can be very difficult for others to accept, which is that life is a collaborative effort. Jupiter in Libra finds opportunities through other people. Doors open through introductions. Careers develop through partnership. Major life chapters begin because of connections. Jupiter in Libra grows wherever it is willing to consider a perspective or a +1 beyond just itself, right? Now, the challenge with Jupiter in Libra is becoming so focused on others that you forget what you actually want, or waiting around for someone to invite you in that you let your life pass you by. Jupiter in Libra is not here to just twiddle its thumbs and wait for an email to come in. The relationships that really support the abundance and the growth for Jupiter in Libra are the ones that enhance the abundance that you create for yourself. So when Jupiter in Libra learns how to let partnerships take it to the next level, after the foundation and the desires and the magic were established by you, Jupiter in Libra becomes an incredibly powerful placement that can timeline jump like nobody's business. If your Jupiter is in Scorpio, growth happens through transformation. And baby, that's intense. This placement is not interested in surface level experiences or surface level expansion, okay? Jupiter in Scorpio wants depth and intimacy. It wants the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It wants to know what's really happening, what's really going on, what's underneath that mask. And while some other Jupiter placements expand by exploring the world, Jupiter in Scorpio expands by exploring the soul. Ooh, chilling. Now, what is fascinating about Jupiter in Scorpio is that opportunities often emerge during periods of profound change. Endings become beginnings again and again and again. Jupiter in Scorpio discovers that what looked like destruction a minute ago, oh my God, it was actually reinvention, and it's better than it's ever been before. So the challenge of Jupiter in Scorpio is trust, and learning that control and trust are very different expressions of spirituality. They are not the same at all, in fact. Some of the greatest blessings are going to arrive when Jupiter in Scorpio actually loosens its grip and allows life to surprise it. Easier said than done, I know, but the real magic is knowing that you don't know what comes next, right? That's the whole casino daddy state of mind. And when you accept and embrace the willingness to explore the unknown terrain, well, honey, that's when things actually get exciting. If your Jupiter is in Sagittarius, congratulations, pop a bottle. You are one of Jupiter's favorites. Seriously. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which means this placement tends to express Jupiter's qualities very naturally, very easily. It's just like flowy all the time, right? Growth happens through adventure and exploration and learning and traveling and philosophizing, through really like committing to this pursuit of meaning. Jupiter in Sagittarius wants to know what's over the next hill. It wants to understand how the world works. It wants to collect all the experiences that can expand its perspective. So this placement and people who have this placement have an extraordinary relationship with hope, right? even after disappointment, even after setbacks, even after delivers the most problematic, horrifying, disturbing, mind-altering, like complete hard-stopping circumstances and situations. Someone who has Jupiter in Sagittarius is somehow like back on their feet, back in the saddle, like galloping off to the next adventure. How? They're blessed. Jupiter in Sagittarius maintains this belief that life is worth living and that there is always something worth discovering right around the next corner. Now, we love to see it. It inspires us all. The challenge is that that optimism can very easily sort of spiral into overindulgence, okay? Jupiter in Sagittarius sometimes promises more than it can deliver. It orders more than it can consume. It believes that things are magically going to work out even when like the writing is on the wall and like things need to change. Things do work out. I mean, Jupiter in Sagittarius is broadly lucky, but I don't know, maybe we should be careful with that one-way ticket in a country that we don't know, getting by in a language that we don't speak or understand, saying yes to drinks with a random person at a random bar with no cell service in a place that we have never ever been in our life. You know what I mean? It's just like living a little too much on the edge. And honey, real magic isn't just like blind faith and putting yourself in questionable situations. It's the willingness to keep searching for meaning even when life is hard. Wisdom is a journey, not a destination, diva. So you can take care of yourself and still be lucky. If your Jupiter is in Capricorn, growth happens through achievement. This placement understands that success takes time. It's something that you earn. It's something that cannot be handed to you. Jupiter in Capricorn grows through discipline and commitment, responsibility, long-term visioning. Opportunities emerge because someone who has Jupiter in Capricorn is willing to do what other people won't do, right? It's focused. It rolls up its sleeves. It's committed. It gets to work. It understands that accomplishments are really something that you have to be fully 120% invested in. Now, technically, Jupiter is not thrilled to be in Capricorn, okay? It's considered to be in its fall here. Obviously, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is Jupiter's fucked up dad who tried to eat him. Like, obviously, it's going to be complicated, right? Capricorn is the essence of responsibility, and Jupiter is casino daddy free spirit. So the challenge with Jupiter in Capricorn is that it can sort of not quite know what its true values are. Like, does it value freedom or does it value success? Does it have faith that everything is going to work out, or does it feel like there's no way that life is actually going to be able to give this person what they want, and then they just have to hustle and work and work and work, and they're never actually going to get their flowers? But Jupiter in Capricorn grows really beautifully when it realizes that success is not only measured by what you build, but actually through the process of creation itself. Because eventually, Jupiter in Capricorn learns that the trophy was never the point. The title was not the point. The achievement was not the point. The real point is the abundance that comes from being the kind of person who has the focus and dedication and determination to make something meaningful and leave a real lasting legacy for themselves. A legacy that's built on consistent hard work over many, many decades. And that is how you overcome your daddy issues. T. If your Jupiter is in Aquarius, growth happens through innovation. This placement expands by questioning assumptions. It grows through experimenting. It grows through pushing back and challenging conventions. It grows through pushing the envelope. Jupiter in Aquarius speaks to a future that others can't even begin to visualize. Jupiter in Aquarius can ask questions that other people haven't even thought to ask yet, which intrinsically means that there's going to be abundance and opportunities available to someone with Jupiter in Aquarius that others won't even realize are there, because Jupiter in Aquarius people are thinking like not just 5 steps ahead, but like 50 steps ahead, maybe 5 years ahead, right? Jupiter in Aquarius has access to possibilities that don't even exist yet, which is such tea. Now, what is also so fascinating about Jupiter in Aquarius is that it has this abundance presented to it through the relationship it builds to and around community. Aquarius, broadly, can be stereotyped as very detached and cold, but in actuality, Aquarius energy is very caring. It really, really deeply cares about humanity. It wants progress. It wants improvement. It wants a better tomorrow. It wants systems that allow more people to thrive and prosper. But when we are thinking that big, right, when we're thinking about humanity at large, we have to remember that people are not concepts, right? And sometimes Jupiter, which expands wherever it is, so it's expanding the Aquarius sensibility, can become so focused on the collective that it forgets the individual and the importance of the singular individual experience that defines a soul consciousness, which is profound. Jupiter in Aquarius has the ability to really find its power and strength by combining this vision of the future with compassion on an individual interpersonal level. And when they can do that, right, when they can take those world-changing ideas and apply them to actual human beings and their connection to actual human beings, then abundance comes not just from being a visionary, but actually from being a kind person who makes people feel good and makes people want to be around them. I think that's tea. If your Jupiter is in Pisces, honey, it's tea, okay? Because before Neptune was discovered in the mid-1800s, Jupiter was the ruler of Pisces. Oh my God. And while Jupiter ruled Sagittarius as well, which would speak to sort of like the adventures of the mind, adventures on land, adventures of passion, Jupiter in Pisces was adventures of the soul, adventures of the spirit, adventures of divinity. So this is truly a sign of the magician, okay? You are magic, baby. Jupiter in Pisces grows through imagination and intuition and compassion, creativity, the connection to the unseen, the connection to faith, to the divine. This placement really gets that life is not logical. There is something so ineffable about being here, right? Like, why are we here? There are synchronicities. There are moments that defy explanation. Magic is real. And the more magical you feel with Jupiter in Pisces, the more magical you become. Now, of course, the challenge is discernment. Jupiter in Pisces can become so enchanted, so hypnotized by possibility that it occasionally loses touch with reality itself. And that is when things can get a little risky, a little too risky for me. That's when the boundaries become blurry, our expectations become very unrealistic. The dream is tantalizing, but actually making it happen feels too mundane. So you're like, I would rather poppy fields, sleep and dream about it than actually do anything, right? But when Jupiter in Pisces learns how to really fuse that faith and that magic, that possibility with effort and hard work and embodiment, Jupiter in Pisces is a force. I mean, it's truly extraordinary. This placement is the essence of Delulu as the Solulu. And it's a reminder for everyone who has it that life is super weird, super silly. It cannot be measured in like normal rubrics and metrics. No, it has to be measured through experience. And that experience is not just something that we seek externally, but something that we explore internally as well. What did you think about today's episode? Where's Jupiter in your chart? What did you learn about it? What breakthroughs did you have? Let me know in those 5-star reviews. Let me know in your comments. And of course, be sure to tell your friends about our show. Tell them about AstroloTea. Make sure that they listen for their Jupiter placement too. And the more people who tune in, the bigger the community that we can build is. Like, honey, we're gonna have the best tea party in the entire world. I'll be back on Monday with your weekly brew, which obviously includes your horoscope. And then next Wednesday, we'll have another tea party. And then Monday, and then Wednesday, and Monday, and Wednesday. Be sure to tune in every Monday and every Wednesday for all new episodes of AstroloTea on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and I will see you there. Bye.